It's 2026, and I just started consistently watching Major League Baseball for the first time ever. Here's every reason for my newfound love of the game. The first and foremost reason that I've been watching this year has been because I was initially sucked in by the World Baseball Classic. I had heard about how insane the final was in 2023 in particular, and I had seen some of the clips of how exciting it got, and I definitely didn't want to miss if something like that happened again. And of course, rooting on your country just activates this inner desire within us that just makes us 10 times more passionate, especially when, as Americans, our team should be winning. Getting to see the US's run and Italy's series of upsets was great, and it served as a great setup for the MLB season. But perhaps the biggest reason that I've been watching baseball is the pacing, particularly of the scoring. Let's compare baseball to other sports. In basketball, there's a ton of scoring, and this becomes too much, to the point where each bucket feels like it doesn't carry much weight. On the other end of the spectrum, you have soccer, in which you could go all game without a goal. But in the middle ground, you have sports like baseball and football, which I think drives their popularity. Every hit in a given baseball game feels big, just like every first down in an NFL game feels crucial. By consistently having these big pop moments in baseball, the sport finds the sweet spot where a hit, and especially a run, never feels meaningless because they're still rare enough to matter, but common enough to not get bored while watching. Somewhat related is the big play potential in baseball. While yes, you do get your consistent hits and runs, the home run is of course still one of the most electric plays in sports, and especially when you start talking about 3-run homers or grand slams, it's enough to excite you just thinking about it. But not just that, once you get into the 8th, 9th, and extra innings, if the game is close, everything starts to feel dramatic. The playoffs in baseball are just about as exciting as any sport in the world's postseason. When you're talking about these packed stadiums, the best pitchers, each ball and strike carrying the weight of a 2-ton truck, it's enough to keep you on the edge of your seat for 3 straight hours. I think we all saw that with last year's World Series. One of the things I really like about baseball is how little it's changed in well over 100 years. If you go back and look at someone's batting average from 1910 and compare it to today, sure, it's not a one-to-one comparison, but the numbers themselves will be pretty similar. And of course, the bones of the game are pretty simple, so it doesn't take too much thinking to fully enjoy it. Sure, there are little bits and pieces of strategy for us to nerd out about, but like I said, the core game stays the same. Contrast this with football, and while I love the complexities of play calling and schematics and how it's ever changing through the decades, sometimes it's nice to just go back to playing a simple game, identical to the one you could play at the local playground. It's also friendly to the newcomers too. Other than the pacing of the scoring, the pacing of the game itself is pretty awesome too. Especially with the pitch clock, the games feel like there's pretty constant action going on. When you're watching baseball nowadays, you usually don't have to worry about long periods of time where nothing's happening and you're asking yourself, what are we waiting for? As much as I love the NFL, that might be one of my biggest gripes with football, is that every game there's a review or a flag and you're just sitting around waiting while it seems like the refs are having a discussion about what they ate for dinner last night. Or in basketball, there's 8 fouls in a row and you spent the last 10 minutes watching people line up for free throws. As much as people complain about them, MLB umps are quick, decisive, and even replay reviews are often decided in a matter of seconds rather than minutes. Related to this pacing is also how Major League Baseball's commercial system works. When you're watching American sports, it's a given that you're going to get bombarded with commercials throughout the event. But some sports leave you on edge on when they're going to go to commercial. It gets really annoying when you're watching an NFL game and you're like, please no 3 and out, I don't want to sit through another set of commercials. Or you're watching a NASCAR race and they just randomly jump to commercial in the middle of the racing. In baseball, sure there's a lot of commercials, but at least you know when they are and they're not going to jump scare you. It's a commercial break every half inning, plus when there's a pitching change, with rare or no exception. Knowing when the commercials are coming helps me to settle into the game a little bit better and makes the breaks themselves feel shorter. This brings me to the broadcasts in general. I really enjoy the team-personalized broadcast that baseball has, whether it's TV or radio. And speaking of it, baseball might be the best sport to listen to on the radio. Because there's not that many moving parts, it's really easy for the announcer to paint a mental picture of the game in your head. When you hear a big hit or home run on the radio, you can basically see the entire play. Whereas with almost every other sport, you've got every player moving in a ton of different directions, and it's very hard for the broadcast to describe the entire team's location, movement, and actions live whilst it all happens. Maybe you expected me to talk about this sooner because it's new this year, but ABS has played a bit of a part in my newfound interest in baseball. Even though I had never really watched baseball in the past, I still had seen clips or knew about how frustrating bad ball strike calls were, and there's something so rewarding about seeing batters and catchers finally be able to do something about the bad calls. There's also something enjoyable about bad challenges too, just in a different way. The general pitch-by-pitch of an at-bat is a lot more entertaining than I thought it would be. Watching intently every pitch, hoping your pitcher throws a strike or your batter takes a ball is surprisingly fun. And I like how the count actually somewhat consistently reaches 3-2. It's fun to put yourself in the mind of the pitcher or batter. Of course, whatever I, a 3-month baseball fan, am thinking in my mind is probably stupid compared to the pros, but it's still fun to think he should throw a curve here and pretend like I'm on the team. Something that adds a fun layer of depth to baseball is the drastic differences between stadiums. As someone who is primarily a football fan, it took me about 16 years of life to start noticing that NFL stadiums were actually any different. But baseball stadiums not being standardized is pretty fun. Whether you're talking about shallow home run friendly areas or super deep areas of the outfield that are friendlier to triples, it makes for an interesting consideration to keep in mind whenever your team hits the road. Maybe it's just because I'm a nerd, but I really enjoy the way lineups and matchups are managed in baseball. Managing which pitcher is starting, which pitchers will come in as relief, and who will be batting based off of who the opposing pitcher is a nice layer to dive into. It's always interesting to ask myself, why is he leading off? Or to find myself saying, okay, wow, they're really going for an all-ready lineup today, trying to exploit this lefty. The way managers pinch hit and pinch run is also fascinating to me, especially because I didn't understand it as a kid, and it's also kind of fun in a weird way when you start disagreeing with how your team is doing it. One of the most exciting things about the NFL, or really any sport, is watching the rookies. It's so exciting to have these brand new faces who could prove themselves to be excellent players or could terribly flop. The way rookies are handled in baseball in particular is great because due to the minor league feeder system, you kind of get a steady stream of rookies joining the team throughout the year. So you're almost always getting that new shiny toy feeling throughout the season and rooting on someone who has a chance to prove himself. Baseball is always on. Like literally there are MLB games on most days in the year. I originally viewed this as a negative because I'm a very thorough person and I thought I would never be able to follow baseball because there's just too much and I'll feel overwhelmed. But I guess I have some more free time than I expected because I've actually viewed this as a positive this year. It's been nice to have something almost every day to throw on in the background while I'm playing a game or driving home. And if I feel like, I could lock in on the game exclusively. Or if I'm busy, that's alright, I'll just catch the highlights tomorrow morning. It really is nice to have something to just return to consistently and not have to wait all week for, like in football. And because games are always on, it's nice that there's always new highlights. That's one of the things that sucks about the NFL, or maybe just being a Giants fan, is that you've basically seen every highlight from the entire season 10 times over by the time July rolls around. I'm so bored of seeing last season's NFL highlights that I can't even bother to watch them. But that's the nice thing with baseball, you've always got new highlights to get excited about and to rewatch. I guess, unless you're a Rockies fan. One of the things that makes baseball fun as compared to basketball is the high variance. Baseball might be the only sport in the world where at the end of the season, almost every team is in the 400 to 600 range in terms of record. It's a game of high leverage plays and one that's hard to dominate day in and day out. And that makes it fun because even though there's no salary cap and it should in theory be unfair, still anyone could win on any given day. Speaking of no salary cap, I actually view this as a positive for baseball. I'm definitely biased on this one for reasons I'll explain in a minute, but I think there is something to the fact that the lack of salary cap drives teams on smaller budgets to build in different ways. Like for example the Rays have done for this season. It also adds to the drama if a smaller team wins the World Series, and it's nice to just have a pro sports league which is just a little different in how free agency, the draft, and money management works. And related to this is how data-driven baseball has become. I'm a numbers guy. I actually work part-time for Pro Football Focus. I think a lot of the sports world is still caught up in the world of qualitative things like vibes, confidence, and identity, whatever those mean. But what I like about baseball is that sure, there's a recognition for team chemistry, but at the end of the day, we build our teams primarily based off the data. I just find it to be a welcome break from all the cliche sports sayings and mentalities. I like how baseball is still at its core a gentleman's game. In a world where almost every sport has some aspect of physicality or violence to it, it's nice to change the pace up with a sport where, if it's played correctly, no one will even touch another person, save for tagging a runner. Even in a game like basketball, not typically thought of as a contact sport, players are ramming into each other, hand fighting, pushing each other, and fighting through contact. There's something uniquely human about baseball, and I actually like how umps will throw people out of the game for even arguing with them. It just sets a standard of respectfulness. I mean, think about it. If you watch an NBA or NFL game, how many times do you see players or coaches yelling at the refs, doing crazy hand gestures, trying to explain things, and they receive no repercussions? What example does that set for the kids watching at home? That if you lose, it's the ref's fault? I prefer the baseball standard. If you didn't like the call, bite your tongue, and walk back to the dugout. The last reason I've started watching baseball is pretty simple. I'm a Yankees fan. I must admit that I was drawn in by the 2024 World Series run and the 2025 Cam Schlittler wildcard game. It makes it pretty easy to watch when there's a lot of winning going on. If I had chosen that other New York team, maybe I would have given up by now. I don't think I have that kind of mental fortitude. But for the moment, I'll enjoy these regular season wins. I'm sure once the playoffs come around, I'll be put in my place though. Anyway, those were 20 reasons why I just started watching Major League Baseball. If you like this video, subscribe. I make lots of sports related videos and we'll be kicking back into gear this summer. Thanks for watching, everyone.